presented by Sib Sports. This is your host, John Ashgar, and today with me I have co-host Jack Vandemotter.
I've missed you guys. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, we're glad to be back and recording. It'll be a lot of fun. So we have a lot to cover since we really haven't recorded in a while. So Jack, let's start with the Browns.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so I think the number one priority that we're all wondering is Freddie Kitchens. And I just want to ask you really quick, if he proceeds to win out, including a win over the Ravens, which would be enormous, is he back next year?
My personal opinion is I would not want to bring Freddie back for multiple reasons. I think the biggest thing is just his lack of knowing how to coach. He hasn't been in this sort of position at all. He was a running back coach and an offensive coordinator for half the season. He hasn't been a head coach before, and I just really think his lack of knowledge of being a head coach has really hurt this team, and I don't think that's something that develops in the time frame that we're kind of giving this team. So I don't really think you could keep a guy like Freddie, even if he wins out.
Okay, so the counter argument to that would be if you're going to fire Freddie Kitchens, and I'm not saying I disagree with I agree. I want to.
You want Freddie out,
but if you're going to if you fire Freddie Kitchens, you should sign a Ron Rivera, a Mike McCarthy, a guy that's done it before. Otherwise, a lot of people would argue you're just going to be right back in the same position.
You're doing the same exact thing.
Okay, and even if you get a Lincoln Riley, which I agree would be fantastic, to think that he's just going to come in and have no issues transitioning to the NFL is just naive and ignorant. And as much as I want to think that can happen, there's going to be a growing curve like with anything.
Yeah, so let's talk about we talked about that a couple days ago. There's some really good options of coaches who are experienced but who are in college right now. Two main ones are Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma and Matt Rule from Baylor. Rule had a great year with Baylor and really turned that program around because they were really biting the dust after all those allegations with their old coach. But the thing is, yes, they've been head coaches before. Yes, they know how to command a team, but they're still college coaches. They haven't coached in the NFL. So there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for them. It might not be as big of a learning curve as Freddie, but I don't think either of them would just be able to come right in and lead a successful NFL team.
I agree with that statement, although I'll say this. Would taking that risk to bring in a college guy be worth it? Even if I guaranteed you that it would take a year for those guys to transition, would you fire Freddie and still hire those guys?
If it only took a year, then definitely I would, because that's getting into the time where we start extending guys like Myles Garrett and Baker. So yeah, I would hire them, especially Lincoln Riley. It just makes more sense with him because he has worked with Baker in the past, and you saw what he was able to do with Baker in Oklahoma. But, you have to be willing to take that risk and know, okay, maybe next season is going to be a failure again, and we're not living up to this hype that we all branded it to be like.
So we have a bunch of I actually am a little bit closer. I don't know what I would say because we all know what's happening with Odell. All this media hype and BS, it's crazy. If we have another failure next season, Odell's I want to say Odell's going to be here, and I'm assuming Odell's going to be here next season. Let's say he is. I want to say Odell would continue, but I don't know if he would. If we have another failure next season, despite who we bring in, he might be gone. This team might start to lose hope. Who knows? Jarvis is a great dude, but he might start to lose hope. These dudes are superstars. They don't want to be in Cleveland if they're not winning.
Okay, well, first of all, he was in New York, so they weren't winning either. But
fair, but he got pissed off and created a monster.
There's two things. First, you can't just go out and give up a talent like Odell Beckham Jr. because you don't get those guys every day. You don't get them every 5 years, 10 years, 15 years if you're lucky. The thing is, first of all, you don't want those guys creating that negative energy in your locker room in the first place. You don't want guys like that. And if there's a guy that just continually questions jumping ship, do you really want that guy in your locker room in the first place? If he's creating all that drama and everything, is he really, really that worth it to have with your team, especially if he's going to have these mediocre results like he's having this year?
That's all right. So my response to that is it's impossible to say because we're not in the locker room knowing what's really going on. For all we know, Odell's a great teammate, and all this media is portraying him as a monster, right? And
is he really that monster?
Is he the problem with the organization? Is him saying, "Oh, I want out of here"? The reason is that really going to say if we get him out of here, is that really going to save the Browns? I don't think so. The second thing is, I totally agree. We're not going to just give up Odell. But
question: if we did give up Odell, what do you think we could get right now?
I think a winning team with a good culture would trade a lot for him because
Do you think we could get a first-round pick back?
Oh, I would trade him for nothing less than at least a first-round pick.
What if he's making a whole fuss and nobody's offering at the time and they know that?
Then we keep. Well, okay. Here's the thing. Like, we traded Odell a year ago, or for Odell a year ago for a first-round pick, Jabril Peppers, who was a solid talent, who was a solid rising talent for us, and later picks that are somewhat irrelevant. But I have a hard time believing that a San Francisco 49ers, a Seahawks, a Patriots are not going to trade a first-round pick. First of all, their picks are going to be later anyway. They're not getting a guy as good as Odell. And second of all, these guys have a culture. They're going to win. They know that they can avoid all this drama. I think that they would be willing to trade at least a first. And then if not, then the Browns have to stick with him because there's no way I'm getting rid of Odell for less than a first.
That makes sense. I mean, you couldn't settle for anything less than a first.
No.
So Odell is a big personality. Baker is a huge personality. Then you guys have guys like Jarvis, and now even Myles Garrett, who we thought was quiet but can pull stunts like that. Even though I do trust Myles, who do you think we could bring in that could control all of this? You mentioned McCarthy and Rivera before, and then we also mentioned Lincoln and Rule, but there's also other options out there.
Yeah. So. There are other options out there. Kevin Stefanski, who's the Vikings offensive coordinator. Pete Carmichael Jr., who is the Saints offensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels, we all know, with his time in New England under Bill Belichick, would be an interesting option. Personally, I'm not a fan of Mike McCarthy.
I mean, we also can't forget that there is the option to bring Freddie back too.
Right, Freddie back. Okay, sure. I'm kind of operating under the sense that if we move on from Freddie, but. For me, I think Ron Rivera would be an interesting hire because for two reasons. First of all, he knows how to create a good culture. Like we all saw when he got fired from the Panthers, it was like one of the most respectful firings you could possibly have. It was like the teammates and the players love him. And you saw when the Panthers a couple years ago went 15-1, I think it was, or when they made the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were 15-1.
That was because a big part of that was their culture. They were having so much fun, playing so well together as a unit. And I think if we can get that with the Browns, if we could get the Browns to realize their potential and play up to their potential, there's no reason that we couldn't be having a season like the Ravens or like the Niners right now. I think so.
The talent's there. There's no question about that.
The talent's there. We need the leadership. Mike McCarthy, I don't think is that guy. I don't think players like playing for Mike McCarthy. He got fired in Green Bay because he was not a good coach. So what makes you think? I mean, he has Aaron Rodgers, a generational talent. What makes you think he can turn the Browns around?
The thing is, he just has the resume. It's there. They were a continual playoff team every year, and the thing is that he has over Rivera is the ring. He led that team to a Super Bowl. Okay,
sure, but I mean, I've always stated the argument. I've never looked at rings, whether it was NBA, NFL, whatever it is, and been okay, this means you're better than someone else. There's so much that goes into a ring. Your opponent that year, your team, who you have, the way things just go and happen. So for me, yes, Mike McCarthy led the team to a Super Bowl and won it, but the last few years, the Packers weren't making the playoffs. They were struggling with they didn't have the best team by any means. Their defense was garbage, but when you have a player like Aaron Rodgers, I don't care who you have, you got to win some games. You can't go 4-12.
That's definitely true. I'm reading a quote right now that it's Bill Belichick saying that McCarthy is one of the best coaches I've ever gone up against.
Now, when was that quote said? How long ago?
That was in 2015. Plus, Bill Belichick does really talk high about a lot of people, just because he's that sort of guy. But so you can't take it that much. But I really think Mike McCarthy wouldn't be a bad option. I know you're opposed to that, Jack, but I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him in and just letting him see what he could do. But that's not the case. We want someone that can come in and win right now.
Right. Okay. So anyway, let's move on. College coaches. These are a little bit flashier. They would be a little bit more of big risk, big reward, I feel like. But
Riley and Rule.
Riley's the biggest name, I think. Rule we both agree on would be a great coach, but I think the people the coach that everyone is looking at right now, whether it's the Browns or the Cowboys or the Panthers, whoever needs a coach, is looking at Lincoln Riley and what he's done for the Oklahoma Sooners.
So I think obviously it's a risk if you're just bringing in college coach. These guys both have high praise. I know the Cowboys are really looking at both of them, at both Riley and Rule.
Which scares me.
Yeah, which scares you because both of those guys probably would want to go work in Dallas over Cleveland.
Exactly, and not to mention the fact that, Texas, it's much closer to Oklahoma than Ohio is. But
and Baylor's in Texas, so that also helps.
Right.
The thing is, though, I really don't want to take that risk unless you're getting Lincoln Riley. I know Matt Rule's a great coach, but just the fact that Lincoln has worked with Baker before and that it's been very successful, that's really the only reason why I would take it. But the thing is, too, it would be so hard to pull those guys away from their respective schools just because they've had such great seasons there. Lincoln Riley's been, in the playoffs the past 2 or 3 years?
Right, and then
I think
this year.
Rule had an awesome year this year. So what would it even take to pull those guys away, Jack?
I think the Browns' only hope is that we have Baker Mayfield. I think that's the only. If we didn't have Baker, there's no way Lincoln Riley's coming in.
Well, would there be? I don't know how much interest there would be in Lincoln Riley in the first place.
Right. I mean, you never know. We're just speculating here, but I just feel like I don't know. I don't see. If I'm being completely honest, I don't see Lincoln Riley or Matt Rule leaving at this point right now.
Maybe for the Cowboys.
Maybe for the Cowboys because they're the Cowboys. But either way, I think we can agree. If Lincoln Riley was on the table, it'd be hard to pass that up.
Yeah, I would not be upset with that. So let's look at actual NFL options. So OCs. So Kevin Stefanski, Pete Carmichael Jr., and Josh McDaniels. Stefanski is definitely someone I would love to see the Browns hire. I know we kind of did him dirty last year by saying we were going to interview him and then not having him come in for an interview. So there could be that there with him just not wanting to be associated with us anymore.
But who knows how hard he took that. I mean,
yeah.
The thing was, I think
he's got to understand it's a business too.
Right, and the Browns I think they knew all along who they wanted to hire, but they kind of were, Freddie Kitchens.
You have to look at outside options. You can't just immediately hire someone. And then someone like Pete Carmichael Jr., he's the Saints offensive coordinator. He's the longest tenured OC in the NFL right now. I would really, really love to see the Browns bring in someone like that for a couple of reasons. First of all, Baker Mayfield and Drew Brees have been compared a lot. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, they're probably when you look at that,
they're
Baker
very
and Drew.
Similar, yeah. So, I mean, you've seen what Carmichael has done with Brees, and you could argue, okay, well, maybe Brees has these great weapons and a great offense. Well, the offense is because of Carmichael, and the Browns also have some great weapons like Chubb, Baker,
and I think
so
it's kind of interesting because Kamara and Ingram, they had those insane years. Chubb and Hunt, if we bring back Hunt next year, that's very similar.
I mean, you've seen what he's done with Latavius Murray and Kamara,
right.
So it's not that different. So I would love to see Carmichael. The one person that I really would not like to see is Josh McDaniels.
I totally agree. I think he's a bust candidate waiting to happen.
I mean, he does have a great offense. I mean, he does lead a great offense. But they haven't been that hot this year.
Right, I'm going to say.
But in the past, I mean, he always pulls it together for the playoffs.
But is that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, or is that Josh McDaniels?
Plus, you saw what happened when he was the head coach of the Broncos. That didn't really go too hot at all. So I don't know how that would go with the Browns.
Right, I think Josh McDaniels is not fit to be a head coach. I think that's one of the biggest busts waiting to happen. And one name that we haven't talked about that I will bring up just because it's interesting is Greg Roman of the Baltimore Ravens. He's getting some hype because of the job he's done. Is that an option you'd at all entertain?
I would consider it, but do you really think he would leave that job right now with how good they're doing?
See, the thing is, though, you never know because if a head coaching job, being the offensive coordinator on a great team is fantastic. I mean, think about it. If the Saints make a playoff run, is Carmichael going to leave? It's the same situation in a way. I don't think Roman's looking to leave, but if a head coaching job comes around, it's hard to turn down an NFL head coaching gig,
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has a resume. He's been the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. for the Bills and now for the Ravens, and you see what he's done with that Ravens offense.
Just kind of a wild card. But
Yeah, no, I would definitely. I mean, that's someone I wouldn't be mad at. Obviously, he would have to go through all the interviews like everyone else, but I mean, that's another good option.
Right.
I just really think the moral of the story is the Browns have to bring in someone with experience.
yeah,
We can't mess it up this time. We have to be sure about this. And, like, obviously it's hard to be sure about it, but we just got to have someone with a resume this time.
Yeah, hopefully we can definitely figure that out.
Let's just talk more about the Browns in general, Jack.
Yeah, I would like to.
We've had this huge roller coaster season that really no one's kind of expected. It's kind of been a huge punch in the stomach for all of us. And a lot of it, obviously, is the coaching, but our players really haven't stepped up either. And part of that has been Denzel Ward.
Yeah, Denzel Ward has been one of the bigger disappointments I think we can agree on. And he's had some good games, and he's had some very, very bad.
Yeah, he's had some really bad games.
So it's really hard to see what his future is going to be like because, he's got the injury concerns that we all know about. He's a very small dude.
Yeah, he's, like, fragile.
So is he going to be able to hold up in the NFL? Second of all, how good is he? I mean, it's hard to say. Like, after last year, everyone's like, okay, we got a lockdown corner, but he's been burned by some I mean, we have a list of guys.
Top tier, like A.J. Brown first week, and then next week he goes to New York and gets burned by Robbie Anderson.
And, like,
the
they're
guys
respectable
they're
receivers.
Robbie Anderson's a speed demon.
And A.J. Brown, I mean, he's playing really well for Tennessee, but still, I mean, you want to make the playoffs, you got to be able to shut down guys that are a little bit better than a rookie receiver and Robbie Anderson. So it's I mean, but then he's also had some good games where he's made some plays and he's locked down some guys. So, I mean, what does the future look like for Denzel?
Well, first of all, I think it definitely has to play with the injuries. At the beginning of the season, he was looking very slow. It looks like he wasn't trying. And then they just say he's injured and then misses, 6 weeks?
Yeah, for a hamstring.
And then rests for 6 weeks and then comes back, totally dominates against teams like the Patriots. And then he's just started to slow down again and hasn't been the same Denzel that we've had.
Right.
So, I mean, part of that's definitely him just being like a fragile guy. Like, we know the hamstrings aren't there for him.
Right.
So we just need him to be healthy, but I definitely think he's capable of getting back to what he was last year. I just definitely think an off season could really help for him.
Right, I agree with that. And I want to bring up this point, kind of go back to Freddie Kitchens for a second, because you mentioned the 6 weeks he was out and what this offseason can do. Is there's been some weird calls with, like, Jannard Avery, you got Hollywood Higgins, like these guys that
Demarius Randall,
we thought these guys were going to be huge pieces. Greedy also missed 6 weeks when Denzel was out. Like, just weird things going on behind the scenes.
Well, let's start with Gennard.
Right.
He's a good player, and Dorsey obviously liked him to grab him in the 5th round because Dorsey doesn't really miss with guys in that, like, low of rounds, like you saw Mac Wilson.
And
just the thing is, like, he didn't fit in Wilkes' defense.
So, okay.
So we had to trade him because of that.
I understand that, but
for a guy of that talent, you find room for him. You find a spot for him.
I thought coming into the season, I thought he played really well towards the end of last season. And coming into this season, I thought he was going to be one of the breakout candidates on this defense. I thought he was going to have a fantastic year, and he ended up not even getting on the field. You can say it's Wilkes' defense because he deploys one less linebacker. I think they tried to move him to defensive end, and we all know that with Vernon and Garrett, he's not going to play much. Plus, it just didn't transition well. I mean, how much is that Wilkes and how much is that Freddie? Because, you could say it's Wilkes, but then you also see these questionable calls with Higgins, who is fantastic last year. And
he was Baker's go-to guy.
And when he played this year,
he
right,
played. Baker found him in the end zone.
And then he goes and says, "Oh, we're going to put the best guys on the field to help us win," and that's not in Hollywood. You're going to play Kadarrell Hodge over him? Like, really? Like, what? I just don't.
From Kadarrell's from. No offense to him, he's a great gunner, but I really wouldn't put him at wide receiver. From Prairie State A&M, and he's going with this guy over Hollywood, who has shown that he could be very, very good.
And
with Baker.
That I agree. I think first of all, that's hurting the team, but then second
of
all,
upsetting and aggravating.
It's hurting the locker room because he's clearly disgruntled, and he's one of the most high energy, nicest, like happiest dudes, and he's like. being obviously very annoyed, and it's like I think it's spreading and it's not helping, and like you've seen, it's all negative energy with the Browns right now.
And then you have guys like Demarius Randall too, who
Oh man,
he hasn't had the greatest year, but you just sit him for a week just because something happens against the Steelers,
which is a huge
a
game.
must-win game,
like,
which we dropped and basically kind of ended our season. I mean, we're not done.
It's very
yet,
unlikely.
But yeah, it's very unlikely.
I mean, it's just questionable. And then to that point is like, I don't want Freddie coaching this dude in the offseason. I don't think Denzel's going to be any better with Freddie there. If like you've seen what he's done now, I don't know.
Kind of back to the coaching thing. If we fire Freddie, your Monken's going to be gone. Same with Wilkes. There's one person that we've kind of agreed on keeping, and who's that?
That is Prefer, who's the special teams coach. Mike Prefier.
However you say it.
Right.
He's been great for us this year. Our special teams really hasn't looked this great before, I don't think.
Right.
We usually get burned on punt and kick returns.
And Seibert's been pretty good. Really
Same
good.
with Jamie Gillian.
Jamie Gillian, who was, a year ago, he was, coming over from Scotland, really didn't, know how to punt all too well a few years ago, and now he's like one of the best, he's been fantastic.
One of the best punters in the league.
Right, you can even say it, right? One of the best punters. So he's done an amazing job.
I would try to keep him.
I would 100% try to keep him, and then
let's talk about players who have done well. Let's bring
let's bring
onto a more positive note.
Right, okay.
So a fan favorite, he's becoming a huge fan favorite, Joe Schobert, Jack.
Joe Schobert. So I was not a believer. You were.
I believed in you, Joe.
I never thought he was a very impactful player. I thought, he gets his tackles, he cleans some stuff up, but I never felt like he impacted the game. But he's changed my mind. And it really started with the first Pittsburgh game. He's been on fire this year. He's been a huge guy for the locker room. He's been fantastic, and I thought he was all but gone coming into the season, but it's looking like we might re-sign him. And we talked about that a little bit on our Twitter.
Yeah, so on our Twitter, thank you guys for the support. We got like 2,300 likes. If we should extend Schobert, just like astounding like results. Like people just love him and they want to see him back. Right. And obviously we don't want to break the bank for him because we do have guys like Garrett and Mayfield that we want to re-sign.
Right.
But like we gotta give him money because if he leaves, he's gonna get a lot of money from teams.
He's gonna get a lot of money.
We have to dish it out.
I don't think we should be looking to lose a guy like Joe Schobert. Like I think the Browns need all the help they can get. So.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he's a tackling machine. But the thing that's really stood out about Joe this year is his pass coverage.
Mm-hmm.
He has 4 interceptions and 9 passes deflected. The passes deflected thing is the most crazy thing to me, just because like those are some cornerback numbers, Jack.
Right. It's better than some cornerbacks.
Exactly. It's really, really good. Plus, he has 2 sacks to add to that too. So, I mean, he's just balling out on every like aspect of the field. 6 tackles for losses, 4 QB hits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really see a reason why you couldn't re-sign this guy. He's been the heart of our defense this year. He's really stepped up with Miles being gone too.
Absolutely.
And you see how he just commands, especially like the young guys like Mac or Sione.
Right.
I just think there's no reason you can't bring this guy back, and I really, really hope Dorsey's been talking extension with him.
Right.
Just because he would be a huge loss at this point.
While there's been plenty of guys that have done bad, there's more other guys that have done well. The leading rusher in the NFL is one of those guys.
King Chubb.
Nick Chubb.
Apparently, he doesn't even talk about it, though.
Right, and that's fantastic.
That's the type of player you want.
Yeah, we have Odell over here who's just... I'm not going to poop on Odell because it's the media, but, like, I mean...
Well, we don't know if it's the media. We're not positive.
All right, whatever.
It could be, though. That's the option.
I'm not being negative about Odell, but, we all know, like, he's a very vocal, outgoing, personality. And so it's nice to have a guy like Chubb who's very grounded, just kind of grinds.
He's got a head on his shoulders.
Right.
He's very humble.
Another guy in that same backfield who has seriously impressed me is Kareem Hunt.
He's been huge for us.
I mean, we know that. What are our chances to re-sign him this offseason?
Well, the thing with Hunt is that we have on his contract, we signed him to it's a 1-year contract, but there's a little like caveat in there that since he was suspended for 8 games,
yeah,
that he would be back with us next year because he needed to play a certain limit of games.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, so we have Hunt back next year.
Oh, for sure. Okay,
yes.
Wow.
So that would be great. Just the thing with Hunt is we really didn't have that third down pressure like passing, because we would put Dontrell Hilliard in there, and
Oh man,
I liked Hilliard, but he really did have butterfingers.
he was not
Especially on that last drive versus the Seahawks. But yeah, I mean, he's really just like rejuvenated our third down offense. Just being able to like pass to someone who can go get that first down, because they wouldn't put Chubb in for those third downs.
And I think Nick Chubb's an underrated pass catcher, but he's not Kareem Hunt. I'm not saying that. And that goes for Freddie Kitchens. I don't care if Chubb can't catch the ball even half as well as Hilliard. I don't want, like, put your best player in there. And so yeah, but no, to Hunt's point, he's been great. And really, yeah, he's extended drives and made plays this whole time. So I would love to have him back. I'm excited to have him back.
All right, let's just talk about a little bit of our future too. So a lot of mock drafts have seen us like targeting linebackers or someone like Isaiah Simmons, who's like a safety linebacker hybrid from Clemson. I think the only option we have is to take an offensive lineman, Jack.
So I think we have two options. Everyone looks at the offensive line. We know what we have to do. We clearly need to address the offensive line. That's our number one concern. With that said, if a safety, I think safeties are other biggest thing, is that, not Denzel Ward, Demarius Randall, he's struggled a little bit.
With Morgan Burnett out too with the torn
Morgan
Achilles.
Burnett, he was playing good until he got injured. So we really have no second safety. Our safeties are pretty weak, and our offensive line's pretty weak. If a top tier safety falls to us in the draft, or maybe the linemen that are currently there in the first round we don't love, would you be opposed to taking maybe a safety first over that offensive line?
So the thing is, the Browns are going to have a middle of the pack pick.
Right.
So those top tier offensive linemen could be gone. If those guys are gone, that's where you go with someone like Grant Delpit or Isaiah Simmons. Grant Delpit just won the Thorpe Award for the best secondary player in college football, which obviously should have gone to Jeffrey Okudah. But Grant Delpit is also a great player. He was hurt at the beginning of the season, so he was getting a little dusted by some of those guys. But I could see us taking a safety and just really help rejuvenate that part of the secondary, because Burnett was at strong safety and he's out. Plus, he's old. Who knows if he can even recover from Achilles? And who knows if Demarius Randall will be back after this year, after not playing super great and after all these antics that he's caused. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that will be a huge point of emphasis that we have to address. But I really think if those linemen are there, like Tristan Wirfs or someone like that, you really can't pass up a guy like that, because we really have to protect Baker.
If there's a surefire like lock that's going to be a star at line, I think I agree. You take him. With that said, Dorsey has not been great at picking linemen, where he has been much better at picking like a skill position or like a safety. I think I trust his judgment in picking a star safety rather than a star lineman. But again, with that said, if there's like a guy that you just can't pass at the offensive line, you got to take him.
Like an Andrew Thomas from Stanford, he'll be gone. But like I mentioned, Tristan Wirfs could drop. Jedrick Willis from Alabama could drop to us. There's guys that would be very worth taking. We just got to make sure we're grabbing the right one. We just can't miss out on this, because this is huge. Like, we're looking for that left tackle to protect Baker in the future, and we don't want to miss out on that first round pick, because that would hurt us even more. Talking about college kids, do you want to hop into college football a little bit? Ohio State?
Sure.
So we're recording right now. It's like 7. I think the Heisman ceremony's on at 8:30. Ohio State actually has 2 representatives in it this year, Justin Fields and Chase Young. And then the other 2 are
Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrows.
And Joe Burrows is going in.
He's going to win.
We all know he's going to win it. There's not really any denying that. He's definitely played the best out of anyone. We would love to definitely see a defensive player like Chase win it, but it would be really hard to pass up Joe right now.
Right. I want to ask you about something, because you're more of an Ohio State fan than I am. But with that said, so Justin Fields, is he deserving of a Heisman nomination? Because here's my point. He's played very well. He's only had 1 interception, I think, 40 touchdowns. The yards aren't quite there, but he's commanded their team and not turned it over, which is really what you need. Is is Justin Fields really deserving of a Heisman nomination, despite his great season and despite where Ohio State's been? But you got guys like Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, even if you want to bring him in it, and then Chuba Hubbard, who have absolutely tore it up. And Justin Fields, how much is he a product of how stacked Ohio State is all over the field versus, his personal success?
I'll just tell you immediately that he has been such a game changer for the Buckeyes this year. It's a completely different offense than what we ran last year with Dwayne Haskins, just because Justin has some legs. But I really think that he definitely should be a Heisman candidate. He has 40 touchdowns and he has 10 on the ground. So you have 50 total touchdowns. You have 2,900 in the air, 470 on the ground. You really can't pass up a guy like that. And his team is 13-0.
I think the 13-0 changes everything. My one thing
with one interception too, which ranks him first in the nation.
That's probably the game changer.
And the weirdest thing is that interception did come versus Miami of Ohio.
Right, which is fried. But so here's the thing. So I saw a stat the other day that said when Derrick Henry won the Heisman, they showed all his stats. Jonathan Taylor has actually had better stats by a notable margin than Derrick Henry when he won the Heisman, and Jonathan Taylor's not even a candidate. With that said, I think that's where I question. You got guys like Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. Where was Jonathan Taylor snubbed for one of those guys, especially considering how good Joe Burrow's been.
He's gonna win, so why not put a guy like Jonathan Taylor?
Right. I don't know.
This is the biggest problem with the Heisman. It's become the best quarterback in the country award.
Same with MVP in the NFL.
Yeah. So you have guys like J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor or Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State who are all deserving of being at least considered for the Heisman vote. Mm-hmm. But it's really come down to the starter who can throw the most touchdowns and the most yards. You've seen it with Baker. You've seen it with Kyler Murray and now Joe Burrow. So, I really don't think that running backs are even getting a fair chance when it comes to the Heisman anymore.
I don't think not only running backs, but I feel like
defensive players like Chase Young.
That's why I love to see Chase Young in there. We all know Joe Burrow's going to win, but I love that Chase Young got consideration because I think the defensive players are really undervalued, and I feel like the quarterback, they put up the crazy numbers, but you have to look at everything relatively. The quarterback touches the ball every single play. If Jonathan Taylor or J.K. Dobbins were to touch the ball every single play, they would probably be they would probably put up the biggest stats. So it's just relative. I feel
it's undeniable how good someone like Chase has been this year.
Right,
with 16.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, and 3 passes deflected. He's just been an absolute beast, total game wrecker. And I really did think he was gonna have a shot at this till he got suspended for those 2 games.
He got suspended, and then since he's come back, he's been slow. It's not been his fault necessarily. Teams have just been they triple covering him.
Triple teaming Chase. You can't really blame him for that. And that's something they're not going to be able to do to him in the NFL. So you can't even kind of carry over that. But yeah, there's been a lot of holding on Chase too. I think the one thing that you could talk about with all of this is Joel Klatt tweeted today how the Heisman is very it's not clear at all, and they just bring in however many candidates they want to. He was saying how you just need to bring 5 guys in, just make it 5 spots, so you're not bringing in 3 this year or 4 next year.
Yeah, that's weird.
5 spots would be good because you could get a representative from each position or offensive or defensive side, so it would make it more representative of the whole league.
Yeah, so
I think it would be great for college football.
Either way, we both agree Joe Burrow's going to win. I think the whole nation agrees Joe Burrow's going to win.
You want to talk a little bit about the Browns game tomorrow?
Yeah, we can talk about the
and
Browns.
We'll wrap it up.
Browns play the Cardinals.
Heisman's.
Yeah, the Heisman. Yeah, Oklahoma quarterbacks go at it, which will be interesting. Predictions? Let's before we get into the analysis, give me your score prediction right now.
I say the Browns win 29-24.
Okay, all right. I think I think the Browns are going to put up over 30. I think it's going to be a statement game. The Cardinals' defense, especially pass defense, has been the worst in the league. So I think this might finally be a game where Odell, I feel like we say this all the time, but Odell might actually see some success. Jarvis has been great, but I think the Browns win 31 to 20. I'll say 31-21, 10 points.
All right. I mean, I don't think this is going to be like a blowout or anything. I think the Cardinals really have a good chance with like how we've been looking. Yes, we are on this stretch where we've won 4 out of 5. The Browns have been like definitely playing better. We tweeted about it. Baker has been really stepping it up.
Yeah.
Our whole team has, but I don't think this game's going to be a joke. They do have a good offense in Arizona.
Here's the thing,
and
though.
Kyler's a dangerous weapon.
Here's the thing: is if you look at the Cardinals, I feel like nobody. When you think of the worst teams in the NFL, who do you think of? The Dolphins. Well, right, but no. Well, I don't think people. I think they think of the Dolphins, the Giants, the Redskins, the Bengals. I don't think the Dolphins
you
are
can't forget the Bengals.
Right. I don't think the Cardinals are the first team that comes to mind. But they've been awful. They've been so bad. And like, look, Kyler's had some moments. I don't think Kyler's been that good either. I feel like people have been overhyping Kyler since he won the Heisman. And like, I think he's a future for sure, but I think the Cardinals are not a good football team. They've lost like I think 8 in a row or something. It's ridiculous.
Okay, they're not good, but they definitely do have potential. But
yeah, they've been in a lot of games.
Yeah.
I'll give them that.
We're just hoping that the Browns aren't going to be the Browns. We can just be the future team.
The Browns
we can be the team that controls the whole game,
right.
Dominates the air and the ground, and goes out of there with a road win.
We just hope for that the Browns don't just have a classic where
Browns
they fall
game.
apart. Right.
Yeah, I mean, and the last 5 games, Baker's TD to INT ratio is 2-1. He's also had 2 rushing touchdowns. And Chubb is averaging 95.6 yards over the ground. So if those 2 guys can just bring it together and do their thing, I really don't think we'll lose tomorrow. But I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
Fair. All right.
I think that's gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that wraps up our first episode in a while. We'll try to get a bunch of these out.
Yeah, over break.
But
thank you, Jack, for coming on again. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and thank you all for listening. And thanks to you guys if you made it this far listening to the Hottest Take Sports podcast presented by Sib Sports. We are officially on iTunes and Spotify and all podcasting platforms now, so you can find the show anywhere. Today's beat intro was made by copyright-free music on YouTube. We'll have a link in the description to it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay updated with our show. Also make sure you rate the show and leave some feedback. Thanks again and see you next time.